You know, as a book reader, I get so invested in my stories that sometimes I just really desperately want to see them adapted into movies because sometimes it would just make such a good movie. Then when it happens, the movies are so tragically bad or at least underwhelming that we just end up using the blanket term, the book is always better. But you know what? Sometimes that isn't true. Sometimes the movie is better. Today we're going to go over exactly that. 5 times where I believe they actually succeeded in making the movie better than the book. I do have them in order from like the least amount of improvement over the book and then the most amount of improvement over the book. So they are ranked here in a sense. Then, real fast before I get into the video, I do want to discuss 2 things. 1, honorable mention, and 2, a warning. So the honorable mention is Roadside Picnic. The book is better than the movie in Roadside Picnic. This is a phenomenal book and a phenomenal story, but it is so hard not to give it an honorable mention because if you have not seen the movie Stalker, you are missing out. It is like part of the Criterion collection. It is pretty much hailed unanimously across the board as a complete and utter masterpiece in filmmaking, which I agree it is. It can also be a difficult watch because if you're not into like 3 hours of a movie that kind of goes not very much anywhere, and then he'll literally linger on a single shot for like 4 minutes at a time without cutting or moving the camera, and you're just kind of watching these people lay on the ground and talk. I don't know. It can be tough to watch for modern audiences because this was made like in the 70s. It's a wild movie to watch, but it is not better than the book. But it is such a just masterclass in filmmaking. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Honorable mention to Roadside Picnic, the movie being Stalker. And then comes my warning to you, because I have seen this kind of a video a few times on the internet of people talking about the movie was better than the book. And I have seen a couple times somebody bring up The Shining. And if you see any video like this where they claim that The Shining, the movie, was better than the book, be very suspicious of this person. Their opinion is so wrong that it's almost painful. Just, they're allowed to have their opinion, don't judge them, but be very wary of anything they say afterwards. Just saying. Anyway, all joking aside, I mean, the book really was better, but I'm just trying not to make enemies here on the internet. Anyway, starting with number 5, we're going to go with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, or the movie Blade Runner. And this one hurt me. This really hurt me to put this on this list because Philip K. Dick is probably my second favorite author of all time, right up there in like the top 2, like legit. And actually, as a matter of fact, I say that so often that I'm probably just going to have to put my money where my mouth is and actually make that video of like the top 10 authors of all time and like just lay it out there for which ones I think are like the best of the best. Hey, you know what? Probably in the next month, keep an eye out for that because I really want to make that video. Anyway, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Like I said, this one hurt me because such a good book, one of his better books, and he's one of my favorite authors of all time. They're essentially the same story with some bits cut out for the movie, some of the mercerisms and the weird religious stuff that happens in the book actually is pretty faithful right up until about the halfway point where they kind of drastically diverge. Anyway, it's, the story of a bounty hunter going after the androids, and it's going to tackle themes of humanity. What is human? What does it mean to be human? All of that stuff. And they're both tackling both of those topics. But then Phil, while he's tackling all these themes of what is humanity, and then he's got this deep contemplations on religion at the same time, he has this streak that runs right down the middle of the book, which is like this really cynical sense of humor, and it goes so far to the front and center that a lot of people struggle with the tone of Philip K. Dick books. Like a lot of times they're like, they read it, they'll watch Blade Runner, and then they pick up Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Like, what the fuck am I even reading right now? And I love it. I love it so much, and I love him so much, and I love him as an author. But if I'm being honest, I think the movie is actually better. And I really can't even point to one thing in the movie that makes it better. It's really kind of like The movie is greater than the sum of its parts, and its parts are phenomenal. Ridley Scott's directing is just top notch. The acting is just so on point for what you want it to be. The tone, albeit drastically different from the book, is so good. Then you have the score from Vangelis, which is just mind-numbingly amazing. With the aesthetic of the props and visual effects departments, it came together in a way that made a masterpiece that is just unrivaled in filmmaking, which then makes it better than the book. And I cannot believe that I'm saying that anything is better than Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but that movie I think was, in my humble opinion. I don't know. That's just me though. Next up, Cloud Atlas. And this is another book that I think is just phenomenally amazing. This actually was on my top 10 greatest science fiction books of all time video that I did. And to say that the movie was better is just, I think it was. This book is like a nesting doll of stories, starting with an old-timey, like 1800s story about a boat, and then we move incrementally forward in through the stories, each story being a little bit more futuristic until we get all the way to science fiction and then far future. And then we work our way back out of the stories. First half of the book is first half of the stories, second half of the book is the second half of the stories. And the writing style can be a little bit of a barrier to the book for some people. I personally thought the second half of the book was a little bit less interesting than the first half because it was just more fun going in than coming out. The movie realized that that was a problem for some people, I think, and chose to chop all the stories up, intermix them together, cut from one to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other, and it makes for this amazingly kinetic feeling that just rips you through the movie. It increased the momentum like tenfold, and it just barreled through. Then it used the same actors in different roles. Now that did come with some very big problems of like bad prosthetics and like yellow face. For some characters it was almost offensive when they race swapped some of these people. It was not great the way that worked out in the end, but the idea of using the same actors to go through all of these different time periods to demonstrate and illustrate the soul moving through the different life forms as time moved on, it was just beautiful. It was beautifully done. I don't know why when that movie came out, if I remember correctly, everybody I knew thought it was terrible, and I loved it. I bought it. I watched that thing multiple times. Granted, it is a super long movie. It's like 3 hours or more. I forget. It was really, really long. It was a lot to get through, but I thought it was great. The acting was great. Hugh Grant in particular just lost himself in some of those roles. I didn't even realize it was him like till like my third viewing. I'm like, oh shit, that's what? Tom Hanks was another one that was phenomenal in that movie. And the old man in the nursing home. Holy crap. That was one of those stories in this that was kind of like, it was all right. The nursing home scenes were just fine. And then in the movie, they were some of the best scenes in the entire movie simply because of the casting of that actor. He just took that part and he chewed it up and he just made it his own. He chewed through that scenery like crazy. Anyway, Cloud Atlas. Next up, I don't actually have the book for it. It's The Hellbound Heart or the movie Hellraiser. I just grabbed Damnation Game off the shelf because I don't have the Hellbound Heart. I actually had to download it and listen to it as an audiobook because for all the time I've been looking for that fucking book in a bookstore, I've never found it. And I'm stubborn. I really don't like to order things like off of the internet if I don't have to. Anyway, whatever. So I listened to an audiobook of The Hellbound Heart. But as good as that book was, I'm going to have to say the movie was actually better. Now, granted, in this movie and this book's defense, the book and the movie were made by the exact same person. Clive Barker wrote the book, Clive Barker made the movie. The book has the exact same story as the movie. Nothing is different other than the fact of the medium of reading about it in a book or watching it on the screen. And I think just Clive Barker's vision, Clive Barker's eye, his ability to create some of those visuals, to translate his ideas in the book into the visual medium of the screen with the puzzle box and the Cenobites and just Pinhead himself. This is another example of casting. Casting just elevating a role. That guy, cannot think of his name, the guy who played Pinhead, Jesus Christ, let's talk about iconic, to the point where I don't know how anybody's ever going to follow him up. Although, speaking of following up Pinhead, I did see the trailers for the remake of Hellraiser, and it actually looked shockingly good. I've not actually watched that movie yet, but the trailers made it look like it was going to genuinely be a good remake, which is rare, like shockingly rare. I don't know if that's true. I could watch it and be like, nah, that was hot garbage, but the trailers look good. I'll just say that much. But yeah, like I was saying, it's just a translation of medium. And I genuinely believe that this translated extremely well to the screen. I'm just going to repeat the visuals of the Cenobites and hell and all of that just made the story so much more affecting. Seeing it in person, oh Jesus, Lord Almighty, it's to this day, not much like it, really. And as good as this, and the book was great, don't get me wrong, amazing book. Movie was better. Down to number 2, guys, and I'm going to say Starship Troopers. Now, I really do genuinely like this book of Starship Troopers. I know some people do not. It's like a meme online right now to be like, oh, that movie was so good. Then I read the book, and it was fascist propaganda. It was terrible. Let's be real, guys. It isn't fascist propaganda. It is a book written by a man who has a very staunch libertarian, and he had some very staunch ideas about libertarianism. The movie itself is basically a government that is kind of run by the military, and service in the military and service to the military industrial complex kind of gives you a higher rank in the society because that is the values that was placed on that society. Then we're going to go and we're going to fight some bugs because the bugs are actually like an invading alien life form that are, coming after us and killing us. And that's that. I don't know why people hate on it so much. Like I said, it's just like a staunch libertarian writing a story. And it's a good story. It's a good book. Everything about it's good. The movie's really good too, which is the movie ends up being pretty much a carbon copy of the book. Most of it is pretty well translated. The plot stays relatively the same. And like I said, people really hate on it for that libertarian vibe to it. And to me, it's like, I have friends and family that are libertarians. I don't see what the big deal is. It's fine for somebody to be earnest in their feelings and earnest in the way the story is told from a very straightforward perspective. Then again, I live in Ohio. You kind of can't go 10 feet without running into a libertarian around in these parts. So if you're going to have a problem with them, you're going to have a problem living here. That's for damn sure. Anyway, now with all that being said, if you were to have the idea of what would happen if we took this story and really just kind of made an actual copy of it and made an adaptation of it, but we took that really earnest feeling from the book, flipped it on its head, made it extremely cynical and satirical, would that improve the book? I argue, yeah. I think it makes for a way better experience when you do that to it, but that's just my personal opinion. That's just my personal feelings. I think it really elevated the content of this book and made it almost into something completely, entirely different, even though it told the exact same story, but it really just took the tone and flipped it upside down and represented it in a completely new light. And it just made all of the thoughts that you're going to have reading versus watching completely different. You can read this one scene here, watch the scene over here, and it plays out in such a drastically different way just because the viewpoint that the creators had when they were doing it, it's just phenomenal. The drastic differences that you're going to get. And love it or hate the book, love it or hate the movie, I think for my personal taste and my personal preference, I'm going with the movie. Okay, now number 1, where the movie was better than the book. And I said I was going to do this like in varying degrees of how much better the movie was than the book. This one's not even close. This one won by such a landslide, it's almost embarrassing. And that is Children of Men. Now, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. That's like a 10 out of 10. That movie is so amazingly good, it's almost shameful to other post-apocalyptic movies. It's that good of a just movie experience in general. Mind-blowing. This book, on the other hand, fucking awful. I could not believe it. I was so excited to read this when I came across it in the bookstore. It's like, oh my God, I know that movie. And I got the book and I brought it home. And don't waste your time. Not a good book, like at all. It's talking about like you take the tone and all of that from the movie where it's just this weird near future world where nobody can have babies and everything's kind of degraded and everything's just kind of broken down a little bit. It's not super dystopian, but it's just dystopian enough. Great vibes. Then you're going to have just everything about it so good. And this one's just like, what if in the future we couldn't have babies? And all it really did to the world was made it boring. And then we're going to do some politics stuff, but that's going to be boring. And like, oh, what if I just wanted to be the leader? Yeah, you could be the leader. I don't want to be the leader. But we think you should be, but I don't want to be the leader. It's just, everything about it's boring. It's like the setting's not interesting. They don't do anything with it. They don't flesh it out. When they do flesh it out, you're like, nothing about this is interesting. Then, then. The worst crime of all this book does is making the main character so devastatingly unlikable that I couldn't believe. It's like page 25 of the book, okay? Like this isn't even a spoiler. This is like setup for his character. And we have a flashback to like 1995 or something like that, when he ran over his 14-year-old daughter with his car and he didn't care. He literally backs up, runs her over, and kills her. And he's like, I guess that was a bad thing, right? I guess, And then he literally ponders and thinks about it for a while. He's like, I didn't really care when I killed my kid. 14-month-old kid, by the way. Didn't really care. Maybe it was because she was ugly. Maybe if my daughter was prettier, I would have cared that I killed her. And you're like, are you f***ing for real right now? This is literally like read the first page of chapter 25, or 25. Read the first page of chapter 5 and you'll be like, the f***? Like, and then you have to go through the next, 250 pages of supposedly having to care about this guy as your main character? Get the f*** out of here. All I wanted for the rest of the book was for him to walk out into the middle of the street and accidentally get run over by a bus. You know, there is nothing this guy should be like leading. No story should this guy be leading. The only thing that this guy should be leading is his car off of a bridge. Like, I couldn't believe it. It was just amazing. So, like I said, the book is dull. It is boring. It takes the premise from the movie and just makes everything not as good and not as interesting and just blah and bland. And then on top of that, they expect you to follow a character that is so atrociously unlikable as this piece of shit in this book. Nope. I don't know how I made it to the end. I kept beating my head against the wall. This should have been DNF'd. I made it to the end. I don't know how. And I get to the end and I was just like, that was awful. That was so shockingly bad. I keep it on my shelf as a reminder of how bad it was. Anyway, fucking don't waste your time. Then, on top of all that, the director very famously said he didn't even bother to read the book when he made the movie. Good move, my man. Normally, I would have very bad things to say about a director that's making an adaptation of a book. He's like, I didn't even read the book, but I'm going to make the movie. I would normally say, shame on you, sir. Read that book before you make the movie. But in this particular situation, good on you. Probably made the movie better. It's probably why the movie didn't suck. Anyway, if there's a book that you think is better than the movie, please go ahead and leave that down in the comment section below. Not The Shining, unless you like being wrong. Anyway, as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.